With their first pick, the Seattle Seahawks got a dog corner. With their second pick, the 20th overall selection in the 2023 NFL Draft, they got a dog receiver, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, arguably the best receiver in this class from Ohio State. I'm Peter Bukowski with Corbin Smith from Locked On Seahawks. Before we dig into the JSN pick, Locked On NFL Draft coverage presented to you by Ultimate Football GM. You think you can run an NFL franchise? Visit ultimate-gm.com to play the ultimate NFL GM simulation game. Start your dynasty today. Corbin, John Schneider seems to be picking up right where he left off last year after putting together a banger of a draft. Where does Jaxon Smith-Njigba fit into what is a pretty loaded skill group on offense already?
The Seahawks have been in the hunt, Peter, for a complementary receiver to go with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett really since Doug Baldwin retired after the 2018 season. They have not had that complementary receiver that excels at moving the chains, contested catches in the middle of the field, and creating after the catch. Those have been three things they have not been able to find another receiver that can consistently do. D. Eskridge was supposed to be that guy 2 years ago as a 2021 second-round pick. He's been injured constantly, has not lived up to expectations. So now they're taking another stab on a player in Smith-Njigba, who missed most of last season with a hamstring injury, but when he was healthy in 2021, had over 1,600 receiving yards. He's a silky smooth route running receiver. He can create after the catch with his quickness as well as breaking tackles. And he's also got elite change of direction skills. So even though he's not a burner, not a guy that's going to win a ton of times downfield, that's not his game. He is a guy that once the football is in his hands, he turns on the afterburners and he's able to eat up yardage quickly. And so he checks off all those boxes that Seattle has been trying to find another receiver that can do those things to complement DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. They've been looking for that for years. And so now they are going to roll the dice in the first round on a player that maybe has a little bit of boomer bust because he's only had one great season of production at Ohio State. But you look at the track record, Ohio State has done a pretty good job of putting NFL caliber receivers into the league that have become studs. Seattle's banking on Jaxon Smith-Njigba being the next one and making this passing offense even more potent than it already was.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson won Rookie of the Year last year. Chris Olave right there with that award. And both of those guys said they believe Jaxon Smith-Njigba is better than them. And so if that is the kind of player that they get, that is a heck of a football player for Seattle. Corbin, this is a team that was at least projected to look at some quarterbacks. They did, taking selfies with all the quarterbacks in this draft. To what degree do you think this first round is a vote of confidence for Geno Smith?
Well, I think if Anthony Richardson would have been there at number 5, that John Schneider and company would have had a very interesting conversation. But once the Colts took him at pick number 4, Stroud and Young were already off the board. I don't think Will Levis was ever in play there at number 5, and they didn't even look at him for number 20 most likely. So at that point, the quarterbacks that they may have had interest were off the board. That being said, bringing in Jaxon Smith-Njigba to go with the 2 stud receivers that you already have, that right there is a vote of confidence. The Seahawks are saying, we know that this offense already was really good last year. You were a Pro Bowl quarterback, but now we're going to give you that complementary weapon that maybe in a year or two can replace Tyler Lockett. That's the other thing worth noting here. Tyler Lockett's not getting any younger, still a very good receiver, but this is looking towards the future where maybe DK Metcalf and Smith-Njigba end up being their top 2 receivers. So I do think this is a vote of confidence for Geno Smith. I also think Seattle would have been more than happy to draft one of those other quarterbacks if they would have been there at number 5. Once they were off the board, though, they went with their best player available at Devin Witherspoon, and they're banking now on their secondary being the strength of that defense and making the pass rush that much better by default.
And so as you look at this team now, it seems like if we take the players that they drafted last year, multiple offensive tackles that come in and start for them, Tariq Woolen comes in and plays inspired football on defense. They add Devon Witherspoon at the top of this draft. I'm looking around at this roster, Corbin, going, I don't know, this seems pretty good. If there is a spot, though, that you think still needs to be addressed, where do you think they need to be looking at some point? It doesn't have to be their next pick, but at some point, it's like, okay, they need to find someone who can do this.
Defensive tackle, defensive tackle, defensive tackle. That's why Jalen Carter, even with the off-field stuff, a lot of people thought that he was still going to be the pick at number 5. Seattle ultimately decided to bypass that and go with Witherspoon instead. They only have 3 healthy defensive tackles right now. They don't have a healthy nose tackle that can man the middle of their 3-4 defense. So they're going to have to draft multiple players at that position. I will be shocked if one of their 2 second-rounders tomorrow is not used at that position on maybe a player like Keanu Benton from Wisconsin or Adebawore from Northwestern, a player that can come in and immediately play reps for them and bring athleticism as a pass rusher and be stout against the run. That, to me, is clearly 1A and 1B as far as needs right now for the Seahawks.
As we stand here, looks like a home run draft for the Seahawks, at least in the first round yet again. For all of the latest on the Seahawks draft and all things Seahawks, subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks, Corbin.